Hi, I'm Josh Wolters with Surefire Ag Systems. Today I'm going to talk about our QuickDraw Spray Tender. Harvest without a grain cart is like spraying without a QuickDraw, and I'm going to tell you why that statement's true. We're going to start off with a little Surefire Jeopardy. So who knows what technology was adopted like wildfire by a huge majority of farmers since the year 2000? Any guesses? What do you guys start using in the year 2000, after the year 2000? Auto steer, exactly right. So, adopted very, very quickly relative to most ag technologies. Who in the room has auto steer? I see a lot of hands go up, right? Who wants to give it up? Anybody? Who's got 2, 3, 4 auto steers? No, pretty widespread technology at this point that nobody wants to give up. It's just a given. So I went back to 2008 in an article by Mike Wilson in Farm Futures talking about auto steer and what are the reasons to adopt that. And he broke it down into 4 main reasons that guys should consider adopting auto steer 10 years ago. The first one was to lower input costs. The second one was to improve timeliness. Third was reduce operator error, fatigue, and stress. And the fourth one was to increase equipment efficiencies. So our question here today is, does QuickDraw provide those same benefits too? And I'll make the case that it does, and here's why. So how does QuickDraw reduce costs? QuickDraw takes those chemical amounts, they're calculated, measured, and logged. So that equals getting the right chemical on the right acre, not too much, where it's going to do its job. Faster fills with QuickDraw is less time at idle, and that's direct fuel savings. But what you'll find is that the reduced hours at trade-in are actually worth even more than the fuel savings are when you get to that point. And third, labor fill time is reduced. So it's just a straight up savings in labor time, or you can take that labor time and do more spraying with it, the productive work that you need to get done. So how does QuickDraw improve timeliness? First off, it is more time spraying in the right conditions. That may be the crop stage, so you're getting to that weed or pest at the right stage of its life. It may be the weed stage. It may be wind, before or when the wind isn't blowing. It may be a rain event that you're able to get more done before that rain event happens. Those are all timeliness, and we know those things can make a huge difference at certain points in the growing season for you. But really, how much time are we talking? I mean, 5 or 10 minutes, that doesn't make the difference. That doesn't pay for what a QuickDraw is. So this graphic is from a customer in Kansas this past July, and it shows a very productive, an extremely productive day they had with QuickDraw. So they sprayed 850 acres with 17 loads, and this was across 15 hours with a 20 gallon per acre spray rate. So they did that by an average pumping time of 6.9 minutes. But more importantly, the total stop time was 11.8 minutes. And that's not one time. That's the average of 17 loads mixed in a day. So that's extreme sprayer productivity, and that's what QuickDraw allows you to get. Here's another customer that does not have a QuickDraw. They were actually down in Texas. The graph you're looking at there is the level of their spray tank. So you're seeing as they fill up and then as they go out and spray. They also put in a big day. They actually had a bigger sprayer, so a 120-foot boom with a 1,250 gallon tank. And you'd think, hey, bigger sprayers should get more done, right? Well, they started at 7:12 in the morning. They finished at 11:27 at night. So they put in a very full day, and you can see that they sprayed 8 loads. Their average fill time was 33.7 minutes. So total stop time was 33.7 minutes. So if we take and we say, hey, if they had a QuickDraw, they could have shortened this fill time down to maybe 12 minutes. Their projected end time would have been 8:34. So that's a time savings of 2 hours and 53 minutes. So what can you do with that time? Well, you may go home and see your kids that night. You may continue to get some more acres sprayed that night if there's a rain come or it's critical. But it's 2 hours and 53 minutes of solid time savings either way. So how does QuickDraw reduce operator error, fatigue, and stress? First, as we talk about fatigue, let's think back to auto steer. Did it almost seem silly that we were going to put an auto steer on a tractor and you'd been driving tractor for all these years, and now you were going to go out there and you were not going to steer that tractor for 12, 13, 15 hours a day. It did a little bit. You said, yeah, sure, I want to get rid of that, but is it really worth that much? I'm going to be sitting there. I can just steer the tractor. I've done it forever. But what we found out is that operator fatigue is a real thing, that how you feel after 15 hours of carefully steering down the row is completely different than how you feel after 15 hours with auto steer. And we found what you can do with that time, which is be a better operator and pay attention to the things that need paid attention to instead of just driving straight. So how does QuickDraw help with those? First, it calculates those batch amounts from a recipe. So when you're out there spraying 8, 9, 12, 15 loads a day, QuickDraw is taking and it's calculating the amount that needs to go in each one of those loads. It automatically loads those bulk products. So at that stressful time of, I need to do a whole lot of things real fast to get the right amount in my sprayer, QuickDraw is doing that automatically. Reduces operator stress immensely. Even on manual products, QuickDraw instructs you how much do I load and when do I do it. So if your manual product should go in third, QuickDraw is going to take care of that for you. And the mass flow meter is simply the best measurement available. So if you want to get accurate measurements so that you are getting 2.5 gallons or 23.7 gallons in a load, the mass meter is simply the best. So here's an example of the batch calculations. QuickDraw takes a recipe, and based on the size of load you do, it's going to calculate how much of each chemical goes in the batch. So ask yourself, how accurately do you measure chemicals when you're filling the sprayer? Here's two common methods that are out there. On the left, we've got a flow meter. If you look in the manual for that flow meter, it's got 20 different calibration settings, and all those vary by about 1%. So if we use a 16 for a chemical, or maybe even a temperature of chemical that should really be measured at a 12, that's going to dispense 4% more than desired. So are you really using and calibrating those flow meters that you're using? That 4% error in a 30-gallon batch would be 1.2 gallons. You do that across too many batches, and that really starts to add up very quickly. On the right, we've got a common cylindrical tank, good way of measuring, but his eye level is at about 9 gallons on that tank. So if I'm looking for a 30-gallon load, he's going to be looking up. And where the scale and the sight tube aren't exactly one, you call that parallax error. So at 30 gallons, there's 1.1 potential error. If you go all the way to the top at 50 gallons, it's 1.7 gallon of error. So how calibrated is the sprayer operator's eye to guess where exactly is 30 gallons or 32 gallons that he may need? So some questions to ask about how you're filling your sprayer. So how QuickDraw measures chemical is with a mass meter. The mass meter measures multiple variables. So it's got mass flow, density, temperature, and it uses all those to get the volume flow. There is no calibration on the mass meter. That's all done at the factory, and as chemicals change, you're putting lots of different chemicals through your sprayer. There's no calibration needed. It's one of the things that makes QuickDraw great. It identifies air in the meter. That's helpful in two ways. One, if you have a small air leak that's always letting a little bit of air in, QuickDraw is going to tell you that based on the mass meter, and you can fix that problem. The other one is when you run a tank or a tote empty, QuickDraw tells you right away, hey, I don't have flow here, and then you can get that batch corrected. It's accurate, plus or minus 0.5%, and it's reliable. Often we get asked, hey, how reliable is that flow meter? We have replaced one flow meter at Surefire, and that's because it wasn't winterized properly and froze. So you still need to winterize it. But other than that, completely bulletproof. So when we talk QuickDraw efficiency, we look at our calculator. And this is for just a quick look at a farm and how much could it save them. So this is a 1,000-gallon sprayer, spraying at 15 gallons per acre with 8 optimal hours a day. So it says, hey, if I'm spraying, my current fill time would have been 175 minutes, and I could take that down to 100 with QuickDraw. So an hour and 15 minutes of time savings. But how does that time savings really calculate to dollars? So we'll run through two options here. One is, hey, I'm just going to use QuickDraw and I'm going to reduce those sprayer hours. So if I do that here, you can see that my payback time for the QuickDraw was 2.7 years, fully paid for, and the return on investment was 25%. And that's based on labor savings and depreciation savings on that trade. But the bottom half is if you can take QuickDraw and spray more acres with it. So we make the assumption that we're going to spray 50% of the time saved, I can be covering an additional acre. Because I still got to drive up and down the road and do that stuff. But 50% can go to an additional acre. The calculations are you could spray almost 4,000 additional acres in half the time you spent tendering. So that 4,000 acres at typical application rates is $23,000, which means QuickDraw pays for itself in 1.1 years, and the ROI is 86.4%. So the efficiency, the returns on that are very significant. So I would say that QuickDraw absolutely does provide these four benefits. Lowers input costs, improved timeliness, it reduces operator error, fatigue, and stress, and it increases equipment efficiency. So, QuickDraw, I think it's the best investment since grain carts and auto steer, and you got to give it a pretty hard look on your farm headed into 2019. Thanks.